Welcome to the deep dive, where we really try to cut through the noise and zero in on what truly matters. Today, we're plunging into something that feels like, well, a puzzle for so many people.
Yeah.
How to actually lose that stubborn belly fat and build muscle.
Yeah, it's a common frustration, isn't it? Seems easy to put on.
Oh, incredibly easy to gain. And then it just seems to stick around no matter what. And we're not just talking about, the fat you can pinch,
Yeah.
the subcutaneous stuff.
Right. There's also that deeper, more dangerous visceral fat, the kind that wraps around your organs. That carries some serious health risks.
Exactly. So our mission today in this deep dive is pretty straightforward. We want to arm you with science-backed, truly actionable strategies for both fat loss and muscle gain.
And we're pulling insights from, well, some of the best minds in the field trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah, and honestly, we've got some genuinely surprising things coming up. Like, do you know even just fidgeting could actually help burn fat? Or how your sleep massively impacts where your body decides to store fat?
It's fascinating stuff.
Okay, let's unlock this.
It really is remarkable how the body's energy balance is, on one hand, fundamentally simple, but on the other, incredibly responsive to what we do.
That basic idea, calories in versus calories out,
Mm-hmm.
it always feels like the bedrock truth of fat loss. And, well, it kind of is, right? There's really no way around that core principle.
You're absolutely right. It's the starting point, definitely. But here's where things get, well, really interesting. That calories out part, the energy your body actually burns.
Yeah.
It's not just some fixed number. It's heavily influenced by your nervous system in ways you might not even realize.
Okay. How so?
Well, what's truly remarkable is that your nerve cells, your neurons, they actually connect directly to your fat cells, like physically link up.
Wait, really? Direct connections?
Yeah. And they release a specific signaling molecule, epinephrine, adrenaline, basically right there locally at the fat cell.
So it's not just general adrenaline floating around.
No, this is targeted. These neurons directly stimulate your fat cells. They prompt them to mobilize fat, which means getting it out of storage and then to oxidize it, which is just burning it for energy.
So my fat cells are basically like on a leash, and my nervous system's holding the other end. That's quite an image.
Something like that. It shows there's this incredible level of control happening.
That sounds like a really powerful lever we're not always, consciously pulling.
Yeah.
Okay, so given that and the core truth about calories, the most effective way to create that deficit, that energy gap, has to be through what we eat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Diet is paramount.
So what does a smart, sustainable approach to nutrition actually look like, not just some quick fix diet?
Right. Well, one of the top nutrition researchers, a guy named Alan Aragon, he champions this brilliant, really sustainable method. It starts simple. You figure out your current average daily calorie intake, just get a baseline.
Okay, like tracking for a few days?
Yeah, exactly. Then you use a reliable calculator to figure out your target calorie intake for fat loss. And the goal is just to, comfortably close that gap between where you are and where you need to be.
Comfortably being the key word there.
Absolutely. And the genius part of his approach is it insists you eat foods you genuinely like and look forward to. That's what makes it a lifelong strategy, not just a temporary diet.
And that makes so much sense for sticking with it.
Yeah. He suggests focusing on reasonably healthy choices from 6 broad categories, things like a protein source meat, eggs, fish, legumes, whatever, a healthy fat source, a fibrous vegetable, some kind of starch, dairy or a dairy alternative, and fruit,
Like the main food groups.
pretty much. And he says pick your 3 favorites from each category, your go-tos. And here's the kicker. He includes 2 YOLO foods.
YOLO foods, I love that. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's basically your absolute favorite indulgent things. Maybe it's dessert, maybe a glass of wine, whatever you really enjoy. You build them in.
So it's not about deprivation.
Not at all. It's not cheating. It's building sustainability right into the plan. It acknowledges we're human.
That feels like such a powerful psychological hack for actually sticking with something long term. Okay, love that. Now let's talk protein. Everyone knows it's vital for muscle, right? But what's maybe one underestimated superpower of protein during fat loss that people often miss?
Okay, yeah, protein. So a key thing often overlooked is the sheer energy cost just to process it. Your body uses up to 30% of the calories in the protein just for digestion and assimilation.
Wait, 30%? Just to process it?
Up to 30%, yeah. It's called the thermic effect of food, and proteins is the highest. That's a significant metabolic boost just from your food choices. People often just focus on the total calorie number and miss this efficiency.
Wow, okay. So it's kind of burning calories while you eat it.
In a way, yes. And beyond that, of course, protein is fantastic for preserving muscle mass when you're losing fat. That's crucial for keeping your metabolism up and getting that toned look.
Right, avoiding the skinny fat thing.
Exactly. Plus, it really boosts satiety, makes you feel fuller, longer, helps reduce hunger, cravings, and it can help stabilize blood sugar too, which is great, especially if you're dealing with insulin resistance.
That's a lot of benefits packed into one macronutrient. So it's not just about building muscle, it's actively helping with the energy balance itself.
Precisely.
So for someone listening wanting to optimize this,
Yeah.
what's a practical way to think about how much protein they actually need? Like, are there numbers?
Yeah, there are good guidelines. For general fat loss and just maintaining the muscle you have, you'd want to aim for a minimum of about 1.2 to maybe 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of your body weight.
Okay, per kilogram. So if someone weighs, say, 70 kilos, that's what, roughly 84 to 112 grams a day?
Exactly, in that ballpark. Now, if you're pretty active or you're really trying to build significant muscle, you might push that higher, maybe up towards 2.0 grams per kilogram. But a simple visual, just as a starting point for most people, aim for about a palm-sized portion of a good protein source at each of your 3 main meals. That gets you in the right zone usually.
A palm-sized portion 3 times a day. That's easy to remember. Okay, so beyond just the quantity, does the type of protein or even the timing really matter that much?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question because, like you said, there's always new research popping up. Quality definitely matters.
How so?
Well, we want to think beyond just, say, highly processed protein powders as the only source. Whole foods bring other essential things, micronutrients, vitamins. Think fish for omega-3s.
Right.
Seafood for zinc, red meat for carnitine, which actually helps your body burn fat. And crucially, animal proteins generally have a higher concentration of certain key amino acids, like leucine.
Leucine. Why is that one important?
Leucine is like the main trigger, the spark plug for muscle protein synthesis for building muscle. You need a certain amount, around 2.5 grams, to really kickstart that process. Animal proteins, like whey, tend to be richer in leucine compared to most plant proteins, like soy. So this just means if you're primarily plant-based, you might need a slightly higher overall protein intake just to ensure you hit that leucine threshold consistently.
Got it. Makes sense. And what about timing? You mentioned timing.
Yeah, timing is actually quite significant. That first meal after you wake up, it's paramount. Your muscle synthesis has been kind of low overnight while you slept.
Right.
So that first protein hit is like jump-starting a cold engine. It often benefits from being a bit larger, more substantial to really get things going.
Okay, front load the protein a bit.
Yeah. And similarly, having some protein before sleep can make a difference too. It impacts your liver's protein stores overnight, helping to prevent muscle breakdown while you're fasting during sleep.
Interesting. What about after workouts? There used to be that anabolic window thing.
Right, the window idea. Well, what's surprising in newer research is that muscles seem capable of absorbing and using far more protein after resistance training than we used to think. That old 40-gram limit, it's likely much higher. We're seeing studies where 60 grams, even 100 grams or more post-workout are effectively utilized.
Wow. Okay, so we don't need to stress quite so much about slamming a shake within 30 minutes.
Probably not about the immediate timing, no. The key seems to be that the muscle synthesis window actually stays open for quite a while, maybe 3 to 6 hours after your workout. So consistent protein feeding within that broader time frame is likely more important than hyper-focusing on the first 30 minutes.
That's good to know. More flexibility.
Exactly. And this also means things like intermittent fasting, say a 168 schedule where you eat in an 8-hour window. That's perfectly fine as long as your first and last meals within that window are well-timed and substantial in protein.
That's really reassuring for people who find IF works well for them.
Okay, so we've nailed down protein, the overall sustainable diet. But what about fats? For years, fat was the enemy, right? Now it seems like it's okay again. Where does it fit?
Yeah, the fat pendulum has swung back, hasn't it? And for good reason. Don't fear healthy fats, you actually need to embrace them.
Why is that? Well, think about it. If you significantly cut back on refined carbs, which is often part of a fat loss plan, your body needs an alternative energy source.
Okay.
If your fat intake is also super low, your body might start breaking down valuable protein for energy instead, which is inefficient and wastes that muscle-building material we just talked about.
Ah, so fats kind of spare the protein.
Exactly, protein sparing. Plus, fats are absolutely crucial for hormone production. This is especially true for women. Very low-fat diets can mess with menstrual cycles and even affect hair health.
Right, I've heard that.
And they're vital components of every cell membrane in your body. They support your nervous system. Oh, and an interesting detail. Some protein absorption is actually enhanced by fat.
Really? How?
Well, there's research showing, for example, that eating whole eggs after exercise leads to better muscle protein synthesis compared to just eating the equivalent amount of protein from egg whites alone. The fats in the yolk seem to help.
Huh. So the whole egg is better in that context.
Fascinating. Okay, so healthy fats are definitely non-negotiable for overall function and a healthy metabolism.
Absolutely.
We've really zeroed in on the fueling side now, nutrition for fat loss and muscle gain, foundational stuff. But of course, the other massive piece of the puzzle is movement, exercise.
Right.
And what's particularly interesting about exercise, as you kind of hinted earlier, is its unique power to target that dangerous visceral fat. Sometimes, even if overall weight doesn't change much. How does that work?
It's true. Exercise has this potent effect on visceral fat. And when you want to maximize that effect while also building or preserving muscle, resistance training is your absolute best friend, your muscle-building ally.
Okay, lifting weights.
Yep. It's profoundly important for both fat loss and muscle gain. Think about it. When you lift weights while you're in a caloric deficit to lose fat, you significantly reduce how much muscle you lose along with the fat.
Right, helps you keep that shape and definition. Exactly. Helps avoid that skinny fat outcome. And here's a really powerful benefit that often gets missed. Preserving muscle actually means you experience less hunger later on.
Oh, interesting. How?
More muscle mass helps regulate appetite signals better, so you're less likely to feel ravenous and regain the fat once you hit your goal. It's like a built-in hunger management system that comes with having more muscle.
That makes a ton of sense. Fewer rebound cravings would be a huge win, especially after dieting. So, okay, for people wanting to build muscle effectively with resistance training, what are the absolute key principles they need to focus on in the gym?
Yeah, there are 3 core pillars, really. First, assuming you're not a complete beginner anymore, you need to train close to failure.
Close to failure, meaning really push yourself.
Yes, it means ending your main working sets feeling like you only had maybe a few reps left in the tank, ideally maybe 2 or fewer. That reps in reserve, or RIR, that provides the strong stimulus needed for growth.
Okay, push hard. Got it. What's number 2?
Second is volume. This is basically the total number of those hard sets you do for each muscle group per week. Generally, more volume leads to more growth, although there are diminishing returns eventually.
So how much volume is good?
Aiming for somewhere around 10 or more hard sets per muscle group per week seems to be a good target for significant growth for many people. Maybe upwards of 20 for really maximizing things, but start with 10 plus low.
Okay. Track your hard sets per muscle. And the third pillar.
The third, and this is absolutely non-negotiable, is progressive overload. You must consistently make your training more challenging over time.
How do you do that? Just lift heavier.
That's one way. Increase the weight. Or you could do more reps with the same weight. Or improve your form, lift with better control, maybe reduce rest time slightly. The point is, the stimulus needs to keep increasing somehow for your body to keep adapting and growing.
Makes sense. You got to give the muscles a reason to change.
Precisely. And look, if you're new to lifting or unsure about form, my strongest advice is find a good coach. Learning proper technique and how to really feel the muscle working that mind-muscle connection makes a world of difference.
Solid advice. Good technique prevents injuries too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's resistance training. Now, what about cardio? Is it essential? And what was that intriguing thing you mentioned about fidgeting?
Yeah, fidgeting.
Yeah. Okay, so cardio. Is it strictly necessary for fat loss? No, you can lose fat just through diet and resistance training, but is it helpful? Absolutely. Great for heart health, and it definitely helps burn extra calories.
Okay.
One key reason it's helpful during dieting is because dieting often reduces something called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Neat. Okay, what is that exactly?
It's basically all the calories you burn from daily movement that isn't structured exercise. So yeah, fidgeting counts, pacing while you're on the phone, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, walking to the mailbox, tapping your foot, all those little subconscious movements.
And that actually adds up.
It adds up significantly. NEAT can be a surprisingly large chunk of your daily energy expenditure. And here's the cool part, tying back to our earlier chat about nerves.
Yeah.
These subtle movements, like fidgeting, they can actually trigger that local adrenaline release from the neurons connected to your fat cells, helping mobilize and oxidize fat.
Wow. So just moving around more, even in small ways, can directly help burn fat via the nervous system.
It seems so. It's a fantastic, really low barrier way to increase calorie burn, especially for people who might not love formal exercise. Just be more active in daily life.
That's really encouraging. Makes activity feel less daunting. Okay, now thinking about optimizing workouts. Does it matter if we exercise fasted versus fed? This comes up a lot.
Yeah, the fasted cardio debate, it's got some nuance.
Yeah.
For shorter exercise bouts, say less than 90 minutes of just moderate cardio, it probably doesn't make a huge difference whether you've eaten beforehand in terms of fat burning during that session.
Okay, so for a typical jog, maybe not critical.
Right. But for longer moderate cardio sessions, 90 minutes plus, or particularly for high-intensity training like lifting weights or doing sprints, maybe lasting 20 to 60 minutes,
Yeah.
exercising in a fasted state can lead to burning a higher percentage of body fat earlier in that workout.
Why is that?
Primarily because your insulin levels are lower when you're fasted. Low insulin creates a hormonal environment that's more conducive to releasing fat from storage to be burned.
Ah, okay. So lower insulin helps unlock the fat stores more easily during the workout.
That's the idea. So a practical suggestion, if you want to try and leverage this, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, do your high-intensity workout, your weights or sprints, and then maybe follow it up with some lower-intensity cardio. And doing that high-intensity part while fasted could potentially enhance the fat-burning effect.
Interesting protocol. High intensity first, then low intensity, potentially fasted for the first part.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay, this is all incredibly actionable. We've covered nutrition in detail. We've covered movement, both structured and unstructured. But there's this other area, often overlooked. But you mentioned it has this critical link to where our body stores fat. Sleep.
Ah, yeah, sleep.
Yeah.
The unsung hero, or sometimes the villain, of body composition. You're absolutely right. It's a powerhouse we often neglect.
So how big of an impact does it really have?
Huge. There was a fascinating study, I think it was 2022, that highlighted this perfectly. They took individuals and restricted them to just 4 hours of sleep a night.
Ouch, 4 hours. That's rough.
Tell me about it. Compared to a group getting a full 9 hours, the 4-hour group ended up eating about 300 more calories per day, almost unconsciously. They gained more overall body weight. But here's the kicker.
Yeah.
They preferentially stored fat in their belly. Specifically, they accumulated about 8% more subcutaneous belly fat and a whopping 11% more visceral belly fat than the well-rested group.
11% more visceral fat just from sleeping less. Even if calories weren't perfectly matched, that location preference is striking.
Exactly. It strongly suggests sleep loss shifts where your body puts fat. And even if you are controlling calories, like in a diet, sleep still matters immensely for the quality of the weight you lose.
How so?
There was an older study, 2010, I believe, where they put 2 groups on the exact same fat loss diet, same calorie deficit. One group got 8.5 hours of sleep opportunity, the other only 5.5 hours.
Okay, same diet, different sleep. What happened?
Both groups lost similar amounts of total weight, but the well-slept group lost 2.3 times more fat and, importantly, 1.6 times less muscle than the sleep-restricted group.
Whoa, so same weight loss on the scale, but the sleep-deprived people were losing more muscle and less fat.
Precisely. Lack of sleep, even in a deficit, seemed to make the body hold on to fat and sacrifice muscle instead, which is exactly what you don't want.
That's powerful. So prioritizing sleep isn't just about feeling good. It directly impacts your body composition results.
Absolutely. Aiming for at least 7, ideally more, hours of quality sleep helps stabilize your mood, your stress hormones like cortisol, and crucially, it reduces those cravings and the urge to overeat, makes everything else more consistent.
Any quick tips for better sleep in this context?
Well, consistency is key. Same bedtime, same wake time, dark, cool room. And maybe avoid really intense exercise too late in the evening, as that can sometimes interfere with winding down.
Good practical advice. Okay, so sleep is non-negotiable. What else do we need to keep in mind for long-term success? Because let's be honest, losing belly fat especially, it can feel like a real battle. Patience runs thin.
Oh, patience and perspective are everything. You hit the nail on the head. Belly fat is often, frustratingly, the very last place fat comes off for many people.
Yeah, you lose it everywhere else first.
Exactly. And that can lead to immense frustration. People feel like it's not working and they quit, often just before they would have seen those real breakthroughs in that area.
So how do you stay motivated?
It's vital to track progress in multiple ways. Yes, the scale and maybe tape measurements are useful data points, but also pay close attention to how your clothes are fitting, how you look in the mirror, take progress pictures, and maybe most importantly, how do you feel? More energy, stronger in the gym.
Focus on non-scale victories, too.
Definitely. And remember that fat didn't just show up overnight, right? It accumulated over time. So it's unrealistic to expect it to vanish in a few weeks. Consistency is the absolute king here. You really might be quitting just before it gets good, right when those changes are about to become visible.
That's a crucial reminder. Don't stop right before the magic happens.
And another point, muscle gain itself can dramatically change your body shape. Even if the number on the scale doesn't budge much or even goes up slightly, muscle is denser than fat.
Right.
So for people who might describe themselves as skinny fat, normal or even low weight, but low muscle and a higher body fat percentage giving a soft look.
Yeah, I know the type.
For them, actually prioritizing muscle gain first, even if it means not being in a steep calorie deficit initially, can fundamentally improve their body composition. They'll look leaner and more toned just by building that muscle foundation, even at the same weight.
That's a fantastic point. Shift the focus from just losing to building. Changes the whole game.
It really can.
Okay, so we've covered the big rocks. Strategic nutrition, effective movement and resistance training, non-exercise activity, the critical role of sleep, and the absolute need for patience and perspective. These are the fundamentals.
They really are.
But for those who've really dialed in these basics, they're consistent, they're patient, and they're curious about maybe getting that extra 1% edge. Are there any evidence-backed compounds or tools that could potentially enhance these processes? Remembering, of course, they are absolutely not magic bullets.
Right, exactly. Strong caveat there. They don't replace the hard work. But yes, there are a few things with decent evidence. Caffeine is probably the most well-known and accessible. Having somewhere between 100 to 400 milligrams, like 1 to 3 cups of coffee about 30 to 40 minutes before exercise, that can significantly enhance fat oxidation, getting fat out of cells, and mobilization burning it.
Okay, pre-workout coffee can actually help burn more fat during the workout.
Seems so. Another interesting one is yerba mate tea.
Oh, yeah. How does that work?
Yerba mate contains compounds that can increase something called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. It's a gut hormone that helps regulate appetite and blood sugar, but it also seems to shift your metabolism towards burning more fat, especially if you have it before exercising.
Interesting. GLP-1, that sounds familiar. Aren't there, prescription drugs that work on that?
Exactly. You're thinking of the GLP-1 analogs, things like semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy. Those are much more potent, prescription-only versions that have significant effects on appetite and blood sugar, leading to weight loss. And there are also compounds like berberine or the prescription drug metformin.
What do they do?
They primarily work by helping reduce blood glucose and insulin levels. And remember how we said lower insulin helps fat oxidation? That's the mechanism there. They create a more favorable environment for burning fat.
Got it. But obviously, those stronger ones, the prescription GLP-1s, metformin, those require talking to a doctor, right? They're not just over-the-counter supplements.
Absolutely critical point. Yes. Those require proper medical evaluation and supervision. They are powerful medications with potential side effects, not to be taken lightly or without professional guidance.
Okay, good clarification. So caffeine and yerba mate are more accessible options. The others need a doctor's consult.
Correct. They're tools in the toolbox, but definitely not the foundation.
This has been incredibly comprehensive.
Yeah.
A real deep dive into what truly moves the needle for changing your body composition. So, just to recap the absolute core pillars for lasting fat loss and muscle gain.
Yeah, let's boil it down.
You're looking at strategic nutrition, right? Focusing on enough protein, getting those healthy fats in, creating that sustainable calorie deficit, maybe with those YOLO foods built in.
Yep.
Sustainable nutrition first.
Then, effective resistance training, focusing on getting close to failure, sufficient volume, and that crucial progressive overload.
Can't skip the weights if you want muscle.
And don't underestimate just moving more in general. That neat fidgeting, taking the stairs, all that stuff adds up.
Hugely important, often overlooked.
And then the critical, often neglected factors. Getting consistent, quality sleep, aiming for 7+ hours.
Non-negotiable for hormones and recovery.
And above all, cultivating patience. Understanding it's a long game, tracking progress beyond the scale, and not giving up right before the results show up.
Patience and perspective. Absolutely key.
It really feels like the knowledge is out there, but applying it consistently is the challenge.
It really is. Knowledge is most valuable when it's not just, understood intellectually, but truly applied day in, day out. And your body's potential, everyone's potential, it's always there, just waiting to be unlocked by those consistent actions.
So as people listening reflect on all this, maybe here's a final thought to chew on.
If you truly prioritize building and preserving muscle, maybe shifting your focus there, like we discussed for the skinny fat scenario, even if you're not actively trying to lumber fat right now, how might that single focus fundamentally change your body composition, your metabolism, just your overall well-being in the long run?
That's a great question to ponder. Building that metabolically active muscle tissue first.
Yeah.
We really encourage you listening to maybe reevaluate your own routines through the lens of these scientific insights we've discussed. Focus on those small, consistent habits. They really do stack up over time to create profound results.